and welcome back to yet another exciting week of the Lazy Money Game. So, over the last couple of weeks, I have talked about how to put your investing on autopilot, and you can continue to see how I'm doing my investing myself. Then it seemed only natural that someone would ask the question which I have just received about how to let someone else invest your money if you were to hire a professional money manager. What would be some good questions to ask for an institution or a person of that nature? So that is what we are going to cover in this episode, before I of course give you an update to my portfolio as well. So before we go through the list of questions to ask a financial advisor, then I would strongly suggest that you look through your friends and your family and see if there's any one of them who is using a financial advisor, and see if there's any one of them who would recommend you to use the same financial advisor as they are doing. Because if they have trust in that person, then perhaps you could have that as well. I'm not saying that you should not still ask your questions, but that is at least a good starting point if someone you trust actually trusts the advice they get. And just as a friendly reminder, before we ask any questions for a financial advisor, we should always have one thing in the back of our minds. Never invest your money into something which you do not understand, no matter who is recommending it to you. If you don't understand it, then simply stay away. So before we get going with this list, why do I actually think that it is important to make such a list? I mean, when I look to friends and family and see how much time they spend trying to figure out what refrigerator they want to buy, they spend an enormous amount of time comparing prices and seeing how much electricity it would be using, what are the measurements, will it actually fit in their home. But when it comes to money management, a lot of people are simply just investing based on some story they have heard. Oh, I have a friend who bought this, and then they say, oh, you should buy this as well. And then they simply do that without actually checking anything. So that is why I think it is important to have a list of very clear things that you can ask to see if it is as good a suggestion as it perhaps looked to be. So without hesitation, the first question I would ask a money manager is, how can you help me achieve my goals? Because why are you seeking an advice? Because you have a clear goal that you want to achieve. Whatever that goal is, if it is because you want to save for a house, you want to have enough when you retire, or whatever your financial goal is, that would always be the first question to ask. So now that they have established that they will help you achieving your goal, then question number 2 and 3 are really linked together, because question number 2 is, how will you document the process? Question number 3 is, do you have a checklist so I can see if you are following the plan that we have agreed on? So it's very clear to you, sitting with a checklist and seeing if they are actually achieving the goals that you have. So this is all linked with that you trust the financial advisor, but if you can actually verify that what you are trusting is good, that is so much better. I think it was actually Ronald Regan who said, trust, then verify. If we then continue, then I would say question number 4, 5, and 6 are quite related as well, because number 4 could be something like, what is your investing philosophy? Number 5, how do you choose investments? And then number 6, what investment approach do you think is the most successful in the long run? And what evidence can you provide from your clients who have had successful results following this approach? So again, you see the same theme here. First, you trust in what philosophy and how they're choosing the investments. And then in number 6, you want to see some verification, some documentation that it is actually as the advisor is saying. So now that you know more about the philosophy and how they intend to invest your money, then a natural next question would be, what should you expect? So a question like number 7, what return should I expect? And if they promise you anything above 10%, I would say that is probably too much to expect. And then number 8, what will you do if one of my investments perform badly for a full year? And if the answer from the advisor is sell, and if they're not hesitating at all, then I would say you should simply just stop the conversation there and leave, because then they are not worthy of being your advisor. There needs to be a good explanation if they want to sell just because the investment has performed bad for a year. Well, why am I so harsh against the advisor here? Well, typically the advisor will make a commission every time they trade on your behalf. So if the answer is sell and there is no reasonable explanation, that simply means they will take money from your pocket and put it into their own pocket. And you could put it differently in saying they are putting their interest above yours, and anyone who is doing that is not worth managing your money. So that is why I'm really hard here and say, if that is what you're experiencing, then there's no need to continue that conversation, because that's not a person you want to trust with your money. If we then continue with question 9 and 10, which are close related, since they are both related to the cost that you have to pay, then question 9 could be something like, how much do you estimate that I would have to pay you in actual dollars the first year for your service? And an answer where you are paying anything which is more than 1% of your invested capital, I would say that is too much and you should be capable of finding a better deal somewhere else. If you then move on to question number 10, what will increase or decrease that number over time? Then I would say question number 10 is just a good way or a sneaky way to ask if their fees are based on the performance that they have, if you don't want to ask that out loud and directly to their face. If we then go to question number 11, then I would say remember that you're paying for a service, so make sure that the service you actually get is something which is worth paying for. So a question like, can I see an example of how my account statement would look, would be a good question to ask. And it's okay if you don't immediately understand it. I don't expect you to understand it immediately, because that is why you are seeking professional advice. But if your advisor is not capable of explaining the statement to you until you actually understand it, then it is probably better to go with another advisor, since you are not receiving the service which you are actually paying for, or you're not receiving the service to a level which you actually need in order to understand what you're putting your money in. And that is why you always have to remember this thing in the back of your head, saying, never invest your money into something which you do not understand. If we then go to some more personal questions for the money managers, stuff like question 12 and 13, do you consider yourself financially successful? Most money managers will have to answer yes to this question, because otherwise, why would you let them manage your money if they are not successful in their own right? And then question 13, just to see if you align with your money manager, what do you define as financial success, to see if you actually have the same mindset when it comes to being a financial success. So this also has the benefit of building more trust and more understanding between you and the manager before you go and ask the tough question, namely question 14, have any of your former clients ever filed a complaint about you, and if yes, then why? So this was 14 questions to ask for a potential money manager, and if you happen to get satisfactory answers to all of these questions from your money manager, then they are probably worthy of taking care of your investments, since they are capable of keeping your interest above their own, and that they have a philosophy and a way of investing which they can actually document that seems to be pretty good. So hopefully that answered your question about how to find a good money manager, or at least some questions that you need to ask, and some of the answers provided that would be good answers when you are looking for a money manager. So no matter if you're trying to get a money manager to manage your money, or if you're trying to put your investments on autopilot, there will always be some work to do up front. But these are by far the two ways that requires the least work. Because if you're trying to do, as I'm doing on this channel, picking individual stocks, know that you will have to spend a considerable larger amount of time if you want to be successful. So far, when you look at my results, you could say I should just have bought an ETF and I would actually have been much better off than what I'm currently doing. That is no secret, that is not a fact that I'm trying to hide. I'm simply just showing what I'm doing, since I believe that is what gets the most value for whoever is watching this channel. So, if we go and take a closer look at my portfolio and see what has happened within this week, the first thing we immediately notice is that the value is down compared to last week. That is why there's a red circle for this week's episode. If we go to the portfolio value tab, you can see that the portfolio is down $500 in value compared to last week. If we then go to my favorite sheet, namely the dividends tab, then you can see that I have received a little more than $90 in dividends within this week. That is truly amazing. And the majority of those dividends was from Store Capital, since they paid me a little more than $70. Then there was Cardinal Health paying me a little more than $15, and Realty Income Corp paying me a little less than $4. And if you compare January 21 so far with January 2020, you can see how much more that I'm earning this year. Last year, of course, since I was starting the portfolio in January, I didn't receive anything, because there's always this time lag once you start to invest. So perhaps if you compare January to October would be a better comparison. And what you can see here is, since I have added a big position in Store Capital, I'm now receiving a higher dividend in these months where I'm very clearly lacking behind my average. And this number will just continue to increase as I continue to add money into the portfolio. If we then go and take a closer look at a company in the portfolio, then we scroll up and let me zoom in here just to make it even more clear here. Then a company like Ford Motor Company. I think it's around 2 months ago when one of the viewers asked me a question, since the stock was now finally up 5% since when I initially bought it, after I have been down more than 50% on the stock, if I was going to sell this stock since it was not paying a dividend. And back then I answered, well, I don't think that the fundamentals have changed, and I don't think that the company is currently highly overvalued, so I will simply stick with it for now. And what has happened within the last week is that a lot of the big banks has updated their estimate for the value of the company. Hence, we have seen that the price has increased quite dramatically. So you can see now I'm close to being up 25% on this stock. Whether or not they are correct in their valuations, I simply do not know, and I don't care too much. What is important to me is I haven't lost faith in the company, and I don't think that the company is currently highly overvalued. Hence, I will stick with the company for the time being. So that actually sums it up for yet another exciting week of the Lazy Money Game. So now you have seen some good questions to ask from a professional money manager before you continue down that road. Over the last couple of weeks, you have seen how to put investing on autopilot. And if you have followed this channel since the beginning, you know something about how I pick individual stocks. And no matter what path you choose, I hopefully can deliver some content that will give you some value. That is at least the intention. So remember to ask questions. I try to answer as much as I possibly can, no matter what path that you choose. So if you like content like this, then please consider leaving a like, giving me a comment, or subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. And until I see you next Sunday, bye!